Alrighty, so we have Josh Culibao versus Yilan. I'm just going to call him Shah from here on. Alright, so Culibao has a 2-inch height advantage and a 2-inch reach advantage. He's quite big for 145. And Shah, he's coming out of the PI Institute in Shanghai. And we saw a couple of those guys on the last pay-per-view at 261. So, we we didn't get the best impression of them, I believe. So yeah, a lot of these guys, they've fought a lot. Like this Shah, he's fought 25 times, and he's only been fighting for 5 years. That's five fights a year, and these guys are by no means vets. I think they've just been running up fights pretty much. Like we saw Rong Zhu, he showed very poor fight IQ, so that's why I'm saying they're not vets. They're not like these veterans who are just gonna like adapt to or just like change game plans on the fly or what have you. Like these guys just rack up fights against this pretty much the same people, the same 15 guys in China, and then come over to the UFC and they didn't look great in the 261 pay-per-view. But yeah, we'll have a look. We'll see if Shah is any different to the guys that we saw on the 261 pay-per-view. He comes in with a Kung Fu foundation. He has a background in Kung Fu. He's had a few Kung Fu fights. I couldn't find too much MMA footage on him, but I found a few of his Kung Fu kickboxing fights, which not really kickboxing because mostly he was wrestling in those as well. But yeah, they seem to be under a Kung Fu type rule set, or I'm not sure, I'm not too familiar with it. But mostly he's looking to land a straight right. He's constantly circling to his left to find an angle in the straight right. But I'd say his bread and butter and his go-to is his wrestling, and that seems to be where he's most comfortable. For Culibao, he goes for a lot of level changes as well. He likes to use wrestling as well, but I think it's not where he's best. I think he's a better striker than he is a wrestler. And he's got decent movement on the feet. He likes to move around a lot, try to get his striking entries. He'll switch stance occasionally to set up the head kick when he's in southpaw and the opponent's in orthodox or what have you, vice versa. He also has a nice right hook off the clinch breaker in a scramble. That's what he caught Charles Jourdain with. And Shah, he does lean back to avoid strikes, so I can definitely see him catching Shah with a combination if he extends his combinations a bit. He doesn't generally throw too many combinations, but I would like to see him throw a bit more combinations in this fight instead of just singular strikes. But what Culibao does is that he will back up in a straight line onto the fence, and it's very easy to back him up. And that's what Shah will be looking to do. He looks to push you back to the fence and then throw a combination, quick combination, and then duck under and then go for the double leg on the fence. Or enter the clinch, look for double unders, and go for that foot sweep from there. And then once he gets you on top, well, once he gets on top of you, he looks for the armbar from mount, looks to progress to mount. Not a huge ground and pound guy, but he will, look to advance position, get into mount, and then look for the armbar from there. But with his takedowns and in his scrambles, he can use a lot of brute strength, like instead of technique. He just at times in scrambles, he just like kind of push the opponent, and that's just not gonna fly in the UFC. If you're gonna want to keep someone on the ground, you're gonna have to use technique. You're not gonna be able to just push their shoulder down and then they fall backwards, which happened a few times in his most recent fight, the one that went the decision. But yeah, so cool about, as I said before, he likes to level change quite a bit, but once he gets like a single leg or like a single leg entry, he'll grab the leg, and I don't think he knows what to do in the next step. Well, he probably does know, but he just doesn't know how to implement it. And yeah, so he just kind of hangs on to the leg and lets go of it eventually. Also, his neck sticks out when he's shooting for takedowns, so I'd really prefer him to not wrestle in this fight, because that's exactly where Shah wants it to be. Also, he will stay on all fours for way too long in scrambles, seems to accept bottom position quite often in scrambles as well, and you don't really want to do this against Shah because Shah does seem to have pretty good top control. As I said before, he's not too much of a ground and pound guy. He kind of just looks for control, looks to advance position, and he's pretty happy just laying laying on you and controlling you for the entire 15 minutes. So yeah, you just don't want to accept bottom position against this guy. It kind of lets him into the fight. So for Culibao, how he wins, he's quite agile, but you know he is liable to use that movement to walk onto the fence. If he could work on that, then I think he'd be a very elusive target and, you know, very hard to hit and very hard to pin in one spot. Also, he has good submission defense. That being said, he does find himself in submission attempts quite often. So if he works on his prevention of those, you know, submission setups, then maybe he wouldn't have to gut his way out of a lot of these submission attempts, but it is what it is. How these guys lose fights. So for Shah, he's pretty low volume on the feet. Like he'll just throw nothing for like 8 minutes and then just with a crazy ball of energy just burst with a combination out of nowhere. Look to set up a double leg, lift you in the air, throw you around. Like seems like a very Yoel Romero type where he really waits for his entries and he's very patient, I guess. But it can lead to him just being outpointed on the feet. And he just generally doesn't throw too much on the feet, honestly. For Culibao, his output slows in the third round, seems to slow down a little bit, pace slows too. Grappling tendencies that we discussed before, and also his just basically his grappling tendencies in the scrambles and how he'll just accept bottom position way too much. And he's pretty comfortable off his back, so that's not going to fly against Shah. Past the victory for these two. So for Shah, obviously pretty much been hinting at it. Just take him down, look to control him on the mat, look to back him up to the fence with feints, your straight right, and then, yeah, look to take him down. For Culibao, just keep it on the feet, stick and move, look to stay off the fence because that's generally where he wants you to be. But yeah, use your distance, stick him with the jab and then circle out. But, you know, you can probably take him down and what have you, but just keep it on the feet. That's your path to victory. Alright, so how I see the fight playing out. So it's a tough fight to call, confidently, since I don't really have any info on Shayilan. I normally have a hard time finding tape from the WLF organization in China, like the WLF Wars organization or whatever they call it. Same as like Kunlun fights and just these Chinese organizations. I have a real hard time finding tape. So if anyone has like a plug or can hook me up with a website that shows a lot of these fights, then that would be greatly appreciated. I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, I normally just have a real hard time finding fights for these guys. So anyway, I have like two MMA fights to base Shayilan's skills off, and one of them is him getting KO'd by Rong Zhu in 2 minutes. The other one, he got Von Flued after both fighters got a point deducted for inactivity. So yeah, these organizations are crazy, man. Also, half the guys he's beaten have pretty much close to 500 records, but I guess he's been putting work in at the UFC PI because the UFC scouters have obviously picked him out of the academy and UFC PI. But if we've learned anything from that 261 pay-per-view, it's that these Chinese fighters who come out of the UFC PI generally had poor strike and defense, maybe don't display the best fight IQ, and were a lot of the time front runners, meaning they started fast and tended to fade as the fight goes long. I'm talking about Zhu Rong, Orichi Lang, and Liang Na. That's the guys I'm talking about. That's the suspects. But yeah, that's what we have to go off. Because I don't have too much tape on the guy. But on the feet, I do think Culibao will throw a little bit more and be able to stick a move on the outside. But I'm worried about that Shayilang's got to wrestle, and I haven't got any footage of Culibao's takedown defense. Like, I think he's defended like one takedown in his career. That's all I could find. In his career, he's been matched up with a lot of strikers. So if he just turns out to have absolutely dog shit takedown defense, then Shayilang's going to look like a huge favorite in retrospect. But you know, yeah, I'm pretty unconfident in this fight. So this is probably the most unconfident pick I've ever made on this channel. But I guess I'll go with Culibao. I'm hoping his size and movement make it hard for Shayilan to get onto his hips and work his takedowns. But yeah, I generally don't like betting on or against fighters who I can only find like sporadic fights of. So I'm definitely staying away from this one. Yeah, I mean, I think Josh wins. I think he gets it done by decision, but you know, he's not the type of guy you want to bet at this price. And if anything, probably a bet on Yilan Shah because, you know, he's got a path to victory and yeah, just Josh Culibao is just not someone you want to trust at this price. He's not a parlay piece. He's not a guy you want to pay too much juice on. So yeah, there's a lot of unknowns with Shah. So I don't really see how anyone can be too confident in this fight. I just lean Culibao, just because I haven't seen enough of Shah, but I haven't seen enough of Culibao either. So definitely wouldn't be paying $1.40 for Culibao. Maybe a tiny stab on Shah because he does have a path to victory, and he could have improved over the past few years at the Shanghai Institute. But yeah, generally probably a pass fight if you want to stay safe.